to fund the costs of non-judicial personnel through June 30th of 2030. We'd like to hear from the reviser first. Jesse Pringle, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, committee. This hearing is going to be on House Bill 2393. What this bill does, it amends multiple statutes on the allowance for the Supreme Court to impose an additional charge to fund the costs of non-judicial personnel. So every single one of these statutes in 2019 had a sunset that the Supreme Court would no longer have the authorization to impose an additional charge. What this bill does is it elongates that 2025 sunset to 2030. So it would be 5 more years of that authorization for the Supreme Court to impose that charge. So when you're looking at the bill, each section is a statute that institutes by legislative direction a fee. And those fees can relate to docket fees, fees for parties filing an appeal, petitions for expungement, marriage licenses, docket fees for certain criminal filings, district court fees, petitions for modification or termination of child custody, child in need of care proceedings or juvenile offender petitions, and other docket fees, such as a probate code. So these are all the statutes that authorize those fees to be charged, and then each one of those sections allows the Supreme Court to charge an additional fee up to a certain amount. So you can see in the bill brief in 8/2107, the docket fee is $75 imposed by the section, and then the additional fee that the Supreme Court would be allowed to impose would be a fee not to exceed the $22. So each statute has the number of the amount that they can charge up to.
I think Representative Hubert has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Does it have a cap on the total amount that the courts can raise? And I know it says non-judicial personnel, but is there a cap not to be exceeded in regards to the different fees that are raised to raise money?
Yes, so each section for that additional fee has a dollar amount that caps it.
I know that, but my question was, is there a total cap over the amount?
There is not that I know of.
Okay, I think that might be something that even when we have the conferees to discuss, that might be something good to look at. Thank you.
Representative O'Halverson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is this updated every 5 years? Which said it was a sunset of 2030. So it's like, is this every?
Yep, so it was 2019 when it started the authorization, and that was proposed to be ended in 2025. So this bill makes it 2025 to 2030.
Did any of the numbers change between from 2019 to now? Is this like updated numbers, or is it only?
As far as the fee amounts, I'm not sure which of these fees have been increased since that 2019 change.
Okay.
Okay, does anyone else have a question for Jesse? If not, then does anyone have any question for the Supreme Court personnel that came here to answer our questions? Thank you, Jesse. Is that Representative Turk? Did you raise your hand? Representative.
Hi, Marisa Bayless. I'm the special counsel to Chief Justice Lukert. As of right now, as Jesse mentioned, there's not a cap on it. I just wanted to give some brief background on how this happened. So the surcharge again went into effect, as she mentioned. It was passed in 2018. It went into effect July 1 of 2019. At the time of 2019 and at the time of 2018, roughly 1/4 of the judicial branch budget was reliant on docket fines and fees. And then in 2022, the legislature passed HB 2351 that moved us from that portion of fines and fees to SGF, so that the majority of our budget is SGF. So as of right now, when surcharges, but also any fines and fees are collected, if they're not distributed within statute to other agencies or funds, they go directly to SGF.
Representative Hubert.
The follow-up question in talking about the SGF that offsets some of these fees, you know, the SGF is still going to the courts, and I'm just wondering, how we oversee, you know, so that it's just can't be a blank check to, you know, to add these fees on top of the STF you're already getting and how that's controlled and monitored. Thank you.
So as of right now, I mean, we do have a docket fee and a surcharge that explains what the surcharge is going to be for every single fee. That, as I understand it, has remained unchanged since 2019. We haven't switched that at all. And with the caps, we're not allowed to go over that.
Okay. And that's, like I said, I think it would be good to, in statute, define, you know, these fees can be raised to a certain level as far as the overall the judicial branch budget, you know, but for it not to be open-ended and allowed to, you know, to get out of control. I think having a determination, what are your non-judicial personnel costs that you're wanting to meet, and making sure that there's the transparency on how that's being used.
Does anyone else have a question? Representative O'Hobson and then Representative Turk?
Just a follow-up question, per se, since 2019, has these numbers changed or the same numbers?
They're the same.
Same numbers?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have a question.
Yes.
You were getting it back in 2019, correct?
Correct. At the time, we were 1/4 reliant. Yeah.
Right. So is there a paper trail of where this money goes?
So I
I'm
will,
looking at it and we're talking about $1 million, well, $8 million, is that correct?
I'll defer to
approximately?
Amy, our CFO.
Because it appears that there's a lot of money running through here. And I'd like to know where that money's going. If it's not going directly to paying some things that you guys need to, then there's money we can cut out of the budget. Ooh,
Madam Chairman, Amy Decker, Chief Financial Officer for the Judicial Branch. So per statute, the funds collected from the surcharge as well as docket fees are deposited directly into the state general fund by the state treasurer. So those go into the big pot of state general fund monies once they're deposited and they're not segregated out. So they just become part of that available to spend balance for you.
isn't that a little unsettling? Anybody else? That there's just $8 million that dumps in and we don't know where they spend it or where it goes? Is that correct? Am I?
If I may, Madam Chair, I might say it a slightly different way. So along with, for example, tax collections, once it's deposited into the state general fund, it doesn't retain any tie to where it originates.
Okay.
So it's much like the other items that you have the responsibilities to appropriate.
Representative Amix.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On page 36 of the bill, it talks about the poverty affidavit. Can you explain that to me? And is that something that is asked for or used regularly?
Defer back to Marisa with the chair's permission.
Yeah, so a poverty, sorry, Marisa Bayless, Special Counsel to Chief Justice Lukert. So a poverty affidavit would just be used, a judge, if a defendant says that they are indigent, they would fill out a poverty affidavit and with the judge in the court to determine that.
So, Madam Chair. So a majority of the time, we have people that have the ability to pay. This is something that's not used a lot of the time.
So sometimes kind of dependent on the court and how long, some will require them to file the exact paperwork. Other judges will just start asking them questions on the record or swear them in to say that they are doing this honestly and everything right, and then give them an update on their status. And then they would declare them indigent based on that evaluation of their finances.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Representative Hubert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm trying to understand, this bill doesn't authorize new employees, new in any way.
No.
And so if we have a budget for the judicial branch that's being paid out of the SGF now, what's the purpose? You're not going to get any more money funding part of this out of these fees. What's the benefit? What's the purpose? What's, the cost to the people paying the fees in regards to, I still not getting, if it's not going to increase your budget, but it's just going to take a part of it and take it out of funding from SGF and it's going to impose these fees. I'm not seeing the entire benefit or reason for the bill.
The benefit would be to the overall SGF balance would go up. We do have, from FY 2021, this would just be the surcharge collection, not the rest of the docket fees. It's roughly 7 million to 7.7 million was the highest.
And has it never stopped? And this isn't going to be an increase. They're already paying these now and
It would not, as far as I know, it would not be increased.
okay, but
The
it's
court
just
has not.
authorizing the sunset.
It's just
moving it
extending the sunset to 2030.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it's not changing any fees that anybody's paying right now?
right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, does anyone else have a question? Well, I do. If you're just going to keep charging people, or you're doing the dirty work, I think, for SGF, for the administration. Why are we putting a sunset date on it?
I do not know. So we did not request the draft of this bill. We were just here for questions, but that would be up to the individual who requested the bill.
Representative Turk.
Who requested the bill, if not the judicial branch?
So as we went through discussing our budget, we made sure Representative Whitemaster was the one, who introduced the bill. We wanted to make sure the legislature was aware that a potential decline in SGF was going to happen unless you decided to extend the sunset.
All right, is there anything else? All right.
I would love to have Representative
Representative
Waymaster share his thoughts with this committee if he requested it.
I'm not even sure he's here, but Representative Turk.
Let me see if I can't fill in the blanks a little bit for you guys. I mean, I'm only trying to fill in the blank. I know you would maybe, I'm guessing that the chairman of appropriations has an existing function within the appropriation process that is sunsetting that fits the overall paradigm,
Package of
right?
money coming in.
Right. It's paying for a portion of the judicial branch that it fits. Moving the judicial branch off of fee funded removes the thought that it might be incentivized to increase fees to broaden their budget. This might be just one of those branches that benefits partially from being fee funded, but at the same time benefits from being in SGF. If the chairman of appropriations deems this a sufficient tool to fund the agency, and the money seems to be going in all the right places, I don't see why we need to change very much at all, unless the judicial branch has some compelling evidence to do so. I don't really see. I don't really see any. I think this, if it doesn't fit, if it's no longer working, then I don't think we'd be seeing this. I like that this has a sunset on it because I feel like the legislature deserves an opportunity to review the current state of the judicial branch and see if it still fits their needs or the needs of the legislature. I like the sunset right where it's at. As of yet, I don't see anything that is warranting a change of the current setup, unless I'm missing something. The committee can fill me in.
Any other comments? Do you have one? We're kind of doing this. I thought, oh boy, we've got something. Do you? Would you?
just to say that Representative Turp, Madam Chair, was probably spot on with his comment that
Okay.
probably makes all the sense, and it probably does put all the pieces together, and it gives that opportunity for fees to be paid as a user portion of the courts, and the main responsibility rests under SGF. So, in fact, I think several years ago when this came forward one time, I think I brought up some of the concerns that Representative Turk brought up about not having the court on a fee system and how to make money. So,
Okay.
thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you, Marisa. I appreciate it. If there's not any more comments, then I'll close the hearing. Is there anything I'm missing? All right. Does anyone want to work the bill today and have that taken care of? I would entertain a motion. Vice Chair Pickert.
Madam Chair, I move that we pass House Bill 2393 out of committee favorably without amendments.
Is there a second? Representative Houghton, I'm going to get you to say something. I'm going to get you to work at it. Okay, with that then, is there any question or comment? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, aye. Opposed, nay? Nay? Motion passes, appears to be unanimous. All right. I will also visit with Chair Waymaster to get a little bit more information. I'll get that back to you. All right. Thank you, ladies. Good job. Thanks for coming over. It's nice to have someone we can ask questions of. All right. The other thing I wanted to do, and I have administration first in my pile, but I wanted to kind of go over the, see, I only have administration of my papers. I don't have any of the governor's stuff, of my stuff. First, I wanted you guys to get what the budget committee report was that went to appropriations. So you saw what we did here. I have that. I'm talking about things that I've written on with my. All I have right here is this. That's all administration. Sorry. But I wanted you to see what I get and what I bring to appropriations. But the other thing is that there are a lot of questions that come up in appropriations. And I just wondered if you wanted to go through and look at things, thought about it. And I thought that Representative Turk could come up with some of the things that came up when we asked these questions, because this is a very complex bill. I can't ask you. The governor's office wasn't as much. Yes, Representative Turk.
If I may, thank you. And Representative Amix can correct or add on to anything else. I think the Office of the Governor is a really good example. I like the two that you picked because you got the Department of Administration, which is incredibly nuanced. It's got a lot of moving pieces. I think that's a good one. So to see this kind of high altitude perspective is good. I also like the Office of the Governor selection because the governor has so many one-time grant expenditures. I think that's a unique, and I also think too, in, you know, how do I say this in the friendliest of ways? Often the legislature and the governor, regardless of party, can get kind of divisive. They can conflict, right? They have disagreements. They don't always have to get along. However, a lot of these grants are very important, and the legislature needs to know where they go, what they do, and what the point is. I think that understanding this from a high altitude will help us work these bills, work these departments again next year without getting into the weeds about, I don't know, getting colorful with it.
Right.
You know what I mean? I thought that both of these agencies went well this year. And this is where I'm looking to Representative Amix if I'm forgetting something. I thought in the presentation and appropriations that they didn't get diced up too bad, everything being relative, of course. And that the work we had done here in committee remained intact. The Department of Administration is very, very complicated, and it's going to get, things are going to move around because from our perspective here at the lowest level, we're not always seeing a lot of the moving pieces. Perfect example, the building across the street under construction. A lot of that, a lot of those decisions are made through the Department of Administration. And a lot of that is, there's a lot of decisions made that predate several of us. So having that context added into the discussion at the appropriations level is kind of the reason why maybe some numbers would change from the work that we did in committee. But if you've had some time through my rambling here to review some of that and you have some questions, I think this opportunity is perfect. As low, I
good
like
time
this.
to
It's a
do
really
this.
great idea. I think I would like to have the conversation with everybody because how often did we reference, well, in appropriations, it's going to get X'd, you know? And now is a really great time to figure out why. So.
Well, and I also wanted to what you don't always see in these meetings and budget hearings is that the governor's budget does, as Representative Turk said, many grants throughout the governor's budget, but they also are in charge of paying for the governor's residents day to day. Even though they have an endowment, they still pay for it. Office of the Lieutenant Governor, who have lots of people in it. Hispanic and Latino American Affairs Office, the African American Affairs Office, Commission on Disability Concerns, Native American Affairs, Federal Grants Office that come through there, Office of Recovery, and that was through COVID-19 things, which will disappear, obviously. Aid to Local Safety and Security Grant Program. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. But that's why not everything is paid. The federal grants are all paid through the federal monies, but the rest is through the governor's office. And a good example is when we made some decisions on cosmetology. It was mentioned that someone wanted the director fired, and we can't because the governor appoints all of those positions. So the only stick or tool we have in this committee is to seek the most information we can and bring it back to appropriations. I'm trying to some of these questions. The governor's budget was not as, there were a lot of questions about non-ARPA funds, federal crime victims funds. There's lots of, like you said, lots of moving parts. This is a smaller thing that's of moving parts, but they added 1.8 FTEs to manage personnel, reorganize personnel across agency programs, and that was deleted. We were trying not to add FTEs, and we also wanted to make sure that we went ahead and helped pay for things that needed to be in there. Are you seeing anything in these papers that you want to add? Or?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. The, well, one of the things that happens is the chairman is hammered by questions from 23 other people. So, it's one of those things that happens. So trying to make sure that, you have a idea on everything that we did in the committee was, pretty incredible to watch. But now you bring up like I think it was the crime victims assistance monies where we had pretty good debate about, the funding level as to where it needs to be. We had the recommendation of the OBC. I think we had a different number for the governor's recommendation, and we thought as a committee that it needed to be funded at the higher level that was requested. So there was a battle there and changes that ended up being made, but I think that there were corrections done in the end, if I remember right. But that happens. But yeah, you're talking about the administration, and then we get into the deal of the new cloud system, and
Right.
we suggested, our recommendation was that it comes out of SGF, if I remember, and ends up coming out of the ARPA funds. It was recommended to come out of ARPA funds, and so yeah, there's a whole lot of moving parts to all of these things. So these budgets are they're interesting to watch and see the outcomes as to how the big committee looks at things as compared to the way the
Small
committee
committees do it.
works. But I think a majority of the times, and jump in here, I think a majority of the times, from what I remember, our budgets were pretty much concurred with. So I think it tells me we did a pretty good job.
Representative Turk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you're right. Again, everything being relative. Of all of the, what is it, Dylan, 99? Is that how many total? Somewhere around that? 99? Sure, it depends how you look at it. Exactly. That's pretty much budgets summed up right there. Depends how you look at it. Of all of them, I think ours were diced up the least, if not the least, the second least right there. But a word or an acronym that you'll hear or see and read in these budgets is ARPA. Well, don't get used to that. That's going away.
Yeah.
But that's another thing that highlights the different levels of our budgetary process. Once you get up to that level, they have situational awareness over buckets of money or avenues of funding that we don't think about at this level. We have a lot of things that we wanted to expand upon, and they're like, well, you know what, because of the way this gear functions with this and the cog here and whatever, they're like, it's best that we use funding from this source as to not impact the overall budget in the future or whatever high level repercussion that might come from something that we make at this level, right? So you'll look at the governor's budget and you'll see that they rearranged some funding from SGF to ARPA, but then you look at the same thing in the Department of Administration's budget. And just to give you kind of an idea of that, I mean, like these are just like the scraps of ARPA. I mean, this is the what's very, very last of it all. And they're just trying to fulfill our obligation to expend those funds before the deadline, right? And a lot of it, and Diana, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of it is the interest, correct?
Mostly.
So from the ARPA money, the big chunk of ARPA money just sitting in the bank, this is what we've gotten from it. So again, you won't be seeing ARPA moving forward. Is that we can't, are we finished with that dialing altogether? I'm feeling like we are. Yeah. So don't get used to that. I feel like there was something else that Representative Amick said that was spot on that I wanted to follow up on, but I forgot what it was because ARPA is a bad word and I'm done talking about
Well,
it.
it's funny money that we got.
Yeah.
And now
But yeah.
everyone wants to maintain their balances.
Mhm.
Like they still get federal funds. So
The chairwoman represented us well this year. It was it's 23 people firing torpedoes at you, and we did. Before we leave today, I wanted to say I think we did really darn well this year. I think we're going to do even better next year because of things like this where we're developing situational awareness that is vital, and I think we're going to do good. Anything's better than the Health and Human Services.
oh, yeah. Well, one of the things that I made a misstep in the governor's budget, and I caused problems for the advocacy centers. And what I had to do was basically meant to give them what they wanted and not expand their funds. And what I did was cut them in half. And boy, there was a lot of kerfuffle on that one. So what I want you to understand is what I had to do is come back and reopen the hearing for the governor's budget and make my motion to change the amount and explain what happened. What did I do wrong? And it was that 23 people asking questions at the same time. Are you sure it's that much? Do we want to give them that much? And whatever. So I went back and fixed it, and they didn't get as much as they wanted originally, but we, as a committee, had not made the decision to give them extra. Does that make sense? We were just going to keep their funding level, or just bring it up a little bit. Was it $1 million up? Go ahead.
Yes, I believe that they asked for, a larger number. We met in the middle. We provided that, but yes, in the crossfire, the wires got a little wonky, but, and I think to highlight the point, reopening a closed budget can be kind of,
Touchy?
yes, it can be touchy.
To say the least.
But the way we did it, it was smooth. This goes to show that when a committee, especially one of that size, has a chairman that knows how to kind of flow this into it all, it went pretty well. And I'd say if that was the worst of it on year one, we're good.
Okay. Well, I did fix, but I kept it in there. Representative Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as the representative said, it was corrected.
Yep, we got it. Well, I got it corrected, but I did want to explain to you that sometimes in that appropriations room, it's like 52 card pickup, and you try to figure out where everything is, and the analysts are trying to help you, and you've made notes, and they ask you questions about everything you haven't made notes on. So, yes, Representative Pickard.
So this is my third year to be on this committee, and this year was definitely different than the first 2 years. So the first question I have, the Legislative Budget Committee. So they looked at the budgets before we got our hands on them.
Correct.
How detailed did they look? Was it a real high level? I mean, it seemed like, we went a lot from their recommendation. So, how detailed is that and how helpful is that?
Well, I think they made decisions to begin with, that they were not going to do any reappropriations, which meant all the agencies that had money left over from the previous year wanted to reappropriate it. And a lot of that was cut from the budgets. Because if you didn't spend it, why do you need extra money? So I know that was one of their first things. And maybe Dylan can also help with some of the thoughts of that. But I think they also wanted to try to keep FTEs down. No, go. Thank you.
So thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, I don't want to speak for the legislature, and I think everybody's experience of things are different. But there have been comments made by the chairway master, which is that, this is just the first year of this amended process. Every single budget was presented to the Legislative Budget Committee, but they went pretty quick, and they were done pretty much a big 10-hour days. They were sort of worked through. So I think they're looking at options. I think Chairman Master has mentioned previously that he's looking at options, ways to change that up a little bit, give everybody more time. That said, the legislative process began almost a month earlier than it's ever begun previously. There are limitations, I think that, are sort of being acknowledged. I think they become clear. But so they're sort of talking about that. As far as adjustments that were made and details, I think you were specifically asking about. All enhancements were removed. So if there was any enhancements that were added to the budget, those were backed out for reconsideration by the budget committees. FTE increases, those were all removed. So if anyone was adding new FTE positions, regardless of whether or not it was an enhancement, those were removed for reconsideration. SGF reappropriations has already been mentioned. EDIF reappropriations were removed, as well as some major reductions to EDIF.
Can you give us the name for EDIF?
That's the Economic Development Initiatives Fund. So that's one of the primary funding sources for the Department of Commerce. When coming into that, based upon the agency request, that fund was underwater, it was negative. And so there were adjustments made to EDIF by the Legislative Budget Committee to bring that up to a positive ending balance. And then there was a bunch of other small, little, tiny adjustments on a case-by-case basis when something caught the attention of the legislature. So that's kind of how the process went. But probably the primary thing is it did allow you to begin reviewing the budgets, right there at the beginning of session instead of waiting until very late in January or early in February. But it did deprive you, obviously, of the benefit of the governor's recommendation to some degree. We have tried to provide that through the yellow sheets, but it did have that limitation.
Does that answer your question?
Well, so then each one of those areas needed to be justified to get back into the budget.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. At first, I felt like, well, it was new to everybody, and I felt like enhancements and stuff, we may not be able to do that, but it seemed like we kind of got into the flow, and yeah, so I wanted to make sure I was picking up on that correctly. And then the last thing, so we spend a fair amount of time and go a little bit deeper, I'm sure, than the Appropriations Committee. So how much credibility does our recommendations have when it goes before the Appropriations Committee? I mean, it sounds like it's picked apart, or at least you have to really answer.
Well, you have to be able to answer as to why you're funding that. But I know that it's been different in previous years. But I think one of the things you have to do when you get into appropriations is you have people who have been either on appropriations for many years, or they're very familiar with a certain budget and they say they don't need this, and then you go from there. Otherwise, what we give to appropriations is where they start. And most things weren't totally picked apart. There were pieces out of like every budget that were taken apart. Representative Amix.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things that was brought up, and Dylan may have to correct me, or Secretary or Representative Turk, with FTEs and the carryover of FTEs, there was a motion made about, people that weren't in FTE positions. Did we eliminate a bunch of those come like July 1?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, they did. Yeah. So if you were an agency that had a lot of open FTEs and they'd been open for a long time, the consensus on the committee was that, well, okay, well now you need to come back and justify that why you need them to stay, which again is a good thing in my opinion. It provides us oversight. And let me answer Representative Pickett's question a little bit, and this will help answer this question. Is that, and the chairwoman said, what we do here is the baseline for their decisions. Keep in mind what that committee does essentially is collects variables from their perspective to come up with the final idea, right? For when we're in here, we use the Legislative Budget Committee and the governor's recommendation as a baseline, and then we take what they offer as a request, and then we come up with our solution. Well, to the next level, they take additional variables, plug it into what we have given them, and then they come up with a solution. You're absolutely right. We rely on a lot of institutional knowledge from other members on that committee. That's why there's 23 total.
Right.
So there are several members on that board or on that committee that were not only chairs of this budget committee, 2 off the top of my head, maybe 3, there are others that have interacted with these agencies consistently. So they do have a baseline and institutional knowledge that that we don't, looking around, that maybe Representative Amix might. Other than that, we don't have that. And they use all that in the decision-making process. So yes, there's a ton of stuff. It could, and there's no number necessarily. I mean, there are things, we will sit there and debate for an hour over something like $80,000, you know, and then let $3 million or $30 million go by without a comment. It doesn't necessarily, the number doesn't necessarily make the red flag, right, that pops up in their head. It's a lot changes, variables, you know, additions and FTEs, or a big chunk of money in addition. That's the kind of stuff that raises people's hands and asks questions on. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question?
Well, and the other thing is that when we talked about getting rid of empty FTE positions, what I don't think everyone realizes is that they've been given that money the year before and probably for the last 3 years and never filled it. So they just have used that money, which was supposed to be for a full-time employee, and putting it somewhere else. And then like, you can't take that from us because they've been getting used to spending it. And what I think we are all trying to do as a committee is, and you can't have those FTEs. You're going to have to do without that money. You didn't use it for what it was supposed to be used for. So you come back and ask us and tell us, oh yeah, now we've got the attorneys we need, or that now we've got the personnel we need. But obviously if you haven't needed it to date, you need to let go of it.
And that results in a lot of the reappropriation money that we're talking about, right? So cumulatively over the years, that'll become reappropriation money, which is why this year I thought was pretty cool, because now we got more information that we wouldn't normally have been offered when we removed those reappropriations. And keep in mind here at our committee level, it isn't just what the agencies present to us that we need to know. A lot of the times we need to know what they're not telling us, right?
You gotta look for so many people you have there, and I know that I'm a broken record. Are these people actually working in the building? And if in fact we're not having people in buildings working, then we can consolidate a lot of places and sell off a building, which is a big savings. I think for me, as I was looking at things, it's a little scary when you start going into 25 million and billions and you know, stop being surprised by the number, is you wouldn't do this with your own budget. You know, you wouldn't be getting money from someone to feed your 4 children when you only have 2. You know, you would be saying, if you're not going to use this, and I've done it with toys on a regular basis, which is a small example. Well, wait, you can't give away my toys. You're not playing with it. Someone else can. I mean, so that, I think sometimes we have to look at things. I think we forget that this is our money. It's your money, it's my money, and it's all of our constituents. And if we're not trying to spend it properly and look at it as though this administration budget is all yours, then you make mistakes, I think. Did anybody see anything in the Department of Administration that they wanted to ask about? Did you have something else too, Representative Pickert?
Just one more comment. So it seems like these agencies should be getting the message that if you don't use the money, you're going to lose the money, and you better be using it in the right place. Period. Okay.
I think so. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wouldn't say lose the money, but you just better have a reason when you come back to justify it. I don't want anybody to ever think they're going to lose anything. In fact, I want it to be the opposite. I want these agencies to come back and be good stewards of our money. Be like, well, we thought it was going to cost us 25 million. It really only cost us 20 million. We have 5 million left over. And guess what? We're returning that to SGF. This year, however, we have a new thing that's going to cost approximately $2.5 million. We think we have it zeroed in pretty well. And because we're good stewards of your money, and we've shown you that we're good stewards of your money, will you please allow us to do this to enhance XYZ? You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, they're definitely not Nothing,
Necessarily.
Good,
we're-
Right.
I
got
was
your
hoping
budget.
that, yeah.
you're not losing anything. It's just,
Good
just like you
stewardship.
do in your own budget at home, you got to justify it. I mean, like, I'm
Yeah.
not going to buy a new refrigerator if I already have one, right? But then again, if there's a new cool refrigerator on the market, you know.
Representative Hubert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first of all, I'm glad you survived. I appreciate, it was a good learning experience. The things that don't kill you make you stronger, you know,
Yeah.
so and again, it is a learning experience. So I'm sure next year you will be much more prepared by the scars that you developed this session. So,
Let's hope so.
but
Here they-
we appreciate your efforts and thank you for doing what you do. I know sometimes decisions get made not at the appropriations level, but at leadership level. And that was kind of like even with that 28 point, you know, whatever it was for the system upgrade. You know, I think the governor's office communicated very clearly in regards to the benefits of putting that in the budget this year, and leadership made that decision at a very high level. And so, you know, that's sometimes just the way things works around here in regards to the budget and a very large expenditure like that. But I did have a different thing just to throw out, and probably for next year, because you mentioned the lieutenant governor and made me think even at the time that I wanted to bring it up. You know, currently we have a lieutenant governor who is commerce chair. And to be honest, the lieutenant governor is not really, I think it's $5,000 or something. It's a very minimal fee that we pay our lieutenant governor. And for him to actually have an active role and to be here full time, he has to basically have to be a chair of commerce or chair of the administration or something in order to be funded to be here, unless he's independently wealthy and wants to be providing charity to do that job. I think at some point in time that needs to be looked at, and maybe next year that discussion would be good for us as we look at that part of our budget. So I wouldn't mind seeing if staff could provide information in regards to preparing us for next year in regards to looking at the lieutenant governor's budget, his salary, and is it right now pretty much mandated that he chairs or leads some agency in the governor's office?
I don't know if anybody has, any of the staff has that information, whether he took less as lieutenant governor because he was being paid as commerce director. It's more. This is kind of a free-form conversation, so.
Sorry about that. It's in our fiscal facts publication, so we'll grab it for you in 1 second. It's a little bit more than that. And then he is compensated, of course, as the Secretary of Commerce as well. So it's the two together. It's been quite common that they have another role in the administration. And so they'll often have a salary there and a salary in someplace else. It's partially funded by it. But we'll get you the statutory salary here in just 1 second.
I like it. Okay. What was I going to say? Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention about administration is that we talked a lot about, well, I did when I talked to the director of administration. If all these people are moving over to docking, what are we doing with the empty offices somewhere else? Representative Turk, as you.
Is it moving over to where?
A lot, going from different buildings over to docking, when docking is opened up.
What's
A
open?
Robert J. Dole building. That's what you get.
Also in the Department of Administration, you will notice that because of the power of the purse, you get to name things. So
What?
that's in there.
What'd you say?
And also because of the power of the purse, you get to name things. So
There you go.
that is in the Department of Administration. You will notice which might give you more context to some of the shenanigans that took place on the floor around that time. Just in case for those that weren't paying acute attention, that's what that's about.
Okay. Advisor Pringle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Lieutenant Governor, in statute shall receive reimbursement for expenses from the duties of attending of office and meetings, et cetera. But then in addition to that compensation, the Lieutenant Governor shall receive for services an annual salary equal to 25% of the amount of the annual rate of pay for a member of Congress of the United States that is not in a leadership role. So that is how the salary amount is determined.
Was that changed when we did the compensation?
It looks like that,
Compensation bill, I should say.
yeah, so the last time that section was amended was last year, and it became effective on January 1st, 2025.
That was the compensation bill that came through legislative modernization. So how much did that end up being? I can't remember.
Is it 25% of congressional pay? Is that what my understanding? Okay. Does it say House or Senate or is it what pay? Same. Oh,
It just says member of Congress.
And that would be a good thing to reference. That's what gave you a little bit of a raise here. What is the, do you know offhand the bill number? I can't remember. I have it in my office somewhere. So if they wanted to look at that. Are you causing problems over there? Well, they're having an off committee conversation, but is there anything else that anyone wants to know or is thinking about with the administration budget? Because, and I don't think, I don't think everyone realizes how much they do. They're in charge of the printing plant. They're in charge of IDs. That's where that money comes from. And it's a lot bigger than we realize. And we don't but barely scratch the surface in this committee. But I'm going to try to be a little bit more, poor Stephen and Dylan have to answer my text messages. So what I'm planning on doing is getting into more detail so that we have more detail when we come here. Okay, it was 2023 SB 229 was the number of the bill that did the compensation. SB 229. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. All right, is there anything else anyone wants questions about or wants more information on? Because I know that we can get that for you. I just felt like what we need to do is think of it, we talked about open FTEs, where this money is coming from. And a lot of money, like we talked about, came from ARPA interest that was left in an account. And that's all been drained this year. So there are some disagreements on how it gets used, but we get it done, don't we? So if you don't have any more questions, then I think our meeting is adjourned.